Now we will discuss about organizing for business ethics. We have discussed in this business ethics management what is business ethics management, what are the different ways of managing, in which we have discussed how we are dealing with the stakeholders, relations with the stakeholders. We have discussed about the codes of ethics formulated by the organization. We have also discussed about how the organization tries to assess like how it is performing as a part of social performance. However, it is required, like if you are discussing organizational efforts to manage business ethics, then it has to be organized properly within the organization through various actions, activities, programs taken either formally or informally, the way it is, the how the environment is designed, so that the people get a feeling of like this is the way to behave ethically in the organization, or this is what the expectations of the organization, or this is how I feel like the organization deals with its stakeholders. So, organizing for business ethics is very important, and organizing for business ethics can be done both formally and informally. Here we are trying to look into both the aspects of organizing for ethics, business ethics. In the formal ethics programs that are done by the organization, there are 4 ways of dealing with business, 4 ways for organizing for business ethics management. What are these 4 ways? It can be compliance orientation, it can be values orientation, it can be external orientation, it can be protection orientation. So, what is compliance orientation? It focuses on compliance, means I am complying with the legal requirements as documented by the law. I am complying with the various standards as we discussed earlier, the different standards of social accounting given or leading to assurance standards given. We are trying to comply with the expectations of the various standards given and the legal expectations by taking measures which, as mentioned in the documents, we need to do. So, it is compliance orientation, and we are trying to follow that in our practices and the way that we do our business, and we are training our employees also for the same. Values orientation is where the organization has certain values and beliefs and about what is right and what is wrong, and how it needs to interact with the society at large, how it needs to interact, basic principles which guides it, how it will be interacting with its different stakeholders, and they take up measures to propagate these values and ingrain this in the minds of their employees, who will be practicing these values in the organization through various training and development programs. The external orientation is when the organization is oriented towards answering to the demands of the stakeholders who are external to the organization, and organization takes efforts through its various social surveys done, studies done, research is sponsored, research is done to find out what are the expectations of the society or the other stakeholders from the organization, and what should be done in a proper way to answer to these expectations. So, when you are talking of external orientation, so audit, then entering into discussion with the stakeholders, stakeholder participation, these becomes important steps of or important programs where the organization starts interacting with the stakeholders to know about their expectations and find out mutually agreed ways to meet these expectations. Protection orientation are again where the top people of the organization wants to protect themselves from the fact like they are not caught for or booked for not following ethical practices in the process of doing business in the organization or in their interactions with the different stakeholders. So, here the focus is also on the legal aspects and economic aspects, and of course, the codes of ethics as determined by the organization. These are followed very extensively, so in details, so that it gives a protective shield to the management, and they can be assured like that if they are following these processes correctly, then they are not doing any harm to the stakeholders at large. Now, we will be focusing into the informal ways of business ethics management. After the formal ways of business ethics management, we understand the formal ways of business ethics management can function well only when the informal system which is there in place in the organization helps it or facilitate it to function. In the informal ways of business ethics management, what we try to study is the ethical culture and climate of the organization. Organizations should try to proactively develop an organizational culture so that it promotes ethics within the organization. So, organizations with problems of ethics, issues facing organizations which are facing issues of ethical problems should take up a culture change approach to solving them. What is a culture change approach? Which is improving in ethical decision making have widely been argued to require a managed transformation in the organization's values in order to create a more ethical climate. However, a point of caution here is that if the organization is trying to promote only one single set of prominent values as this is right and this is wrong for the organization, it may so happen that it will appear like the organization is trying to make everyone purposefully follow that system of right and wrong, what the organization is thinking to be the right and wrong only, and it is trying to block the moral imagination, the moral autonomy of the individuals to nurture their ways of ethical thinking and trying to discriminate between what is right and wrong, and then take a proper decision regarding it. So, to overcome this issue of cultural change, what is more desirable, what is more desirable as a technique of informal ways of managing ethics through organizational culture is to promote cultural learning, where the focus is on smaller subcultural groups within the firm who may have different set of values, who may have different ways of interpreting right and wrong about a particular issue at hand, and the dissent which is there among the different groups in the organization has to be nurtured, has to be promoted, so that they can express their views prominently, and then it promotes a holistic learning by learning from the best steps taken, best ways put forward by the different groups based on their own understanding of what is right and what is wrong. This, if you can try to correlate with, will find like this is like using a ethical prism. So, if we are following the culture change approach, we are following one lens of right and wrong, which is the lens given by the maybe the top management bosses of the organization based on their own personal values of what they understand to be right and wrong, or how they want to be in the linking it with the formal practices, protective mode or compliance mode, or value orientation mode, whichever you have seen in the formal management ethics management techniques. So, it only propagates that view, and the employees may feel a distancing of their own self, because they are not able to connect with the views, prominent views that has been stated by the organization, and what really they feel like that should be done in a proper way, and this is where how it should decision should be taken. On the contrary, if the cultural learning view is promoted, then it acts as a prism where not only the top management's view, the prominent view of the organization is there, but all the subcultures may have used different lens of ethics, as we have seen in utilitarian perspective, egoism perspective, duty perspective, rights perspective, justice perspective, discourse ethics, feminist ethics, postmodern ethics, virtue ethics, and may have been moved by various constraints, or may have analyzed the situational constraints in different way to arrive at a particular decision, right and wrong, that they feel is justified for that particular situation. So, if this dialogue is promoted, if this functional conflict between the subgroups is promoted within the organization, we get to know various alternatives of dealing with a particular problem, and then we can assimilate them and we can put them together at a common point and find out the best ways out to answer to an ethical problem, and in that way it will promote learning within the organization. One of the major role played by the leader in the management of business ethics. So, in the last part of the discussion, we will be focusing on business ethics and leadership. So, leaders are often said to set the ethical tones of the business. Here we have to differentiate between managers and leaders, because leaders are people who are mainly responsible for sensing for the change, awareness of change, introducing change, implementing change, and then dealing with the change processes and move the change process forward. So, when we are talking of ethics management, the role of leaders really become very important for the organization. So, leaders are said to set the ethical tone in the organizations. Leadership is value laden. If you are talking of transformational leaders also, they are the leaders who try to see the values guiding the organization, try to see the values which nurtured will help the organization to function in an ethical way, and they take an approach which will help the organization to transform from its present state to its future state. So, let us see what are the role of leaders in the two change approaches that we have taken to introduce related to culture. When it is a culture change approach, so leaders' role is to articulate and to personify the values that the organization aspires to develop and propagate within the organization, and they should be inspiring the followers, the motivate the employees to follow their lead. So, they will personify the values, they will articulate about the values, and they will motivate employees to follow their lead and the values as they have personified and tried to lead with the example, so that it creates replica of the same values within the employees mindset also, and their employees also start behaving in the same way as the leaders are doing and as thought desirable by the organization. In the cultural learning perspective, the role of a leader is to promote participation and empowerment within the subgroups, so that they can talk with each other, they can debate with each other, to give them, and the role of leader is to give them an environment of open environment of trust and comfort, so that they can talk openly about the ethical issues and problems without fear of getting punished. They can ethically deal with the issues, they can criticize about each other's viewpoints also, critically analyze each other's viewpoints also, and debate about each other's viewpoints, and then come to conclusion about what is right and wrong as per that given situation. So, this will foster moral imagination and autonomy of the employees and help them to think in an ethical way. If this is promoted within the organization, it nurtures in the employees an ability to think in an ethical way, so that given in future any situation comes which is that of an ethical dilemma, the employee develops the competency to analyze what is right and wrong in that particular context, and then take a proper judgment about it, even though the guidelines may or may not be written in the codes of ethics as given by the organization. If there is any ambiguity in the codes of ethics given, these training that the employee receives through the cultural learning environment helps them to take a proper decision when faced with the dilemma, ethical dilemma situations in the processes of their they doing their work. So, what we can say, like ethical behavior is not to be promoted simply through promulgation of specific beliefs and principles, but the leader has to play a facilitatory role to promote personal moral engagement, dialogue and choice of the alternative, as this is the right choice for this ethical dilemma. This is the right choice of answer for this ethical dilemma, as this is, if done, is ethically right, and if the other thing is done, it is ethically not right. So, what we have learned in this particular discussion is we have learnt about business ethics management principles, the practices followed. We have questioned also the effectiveness of ethical codes and how to balance between the more ambiguous and well written codes. So, we have started also understanding the crucial roles of using these tools and the process of the development and the implementation and the follow up, and the how to set the standards, how to go for stakeholder management, and how to assess and organize the business management, ethics management processes, policies and programs within the organization. Thank you.